Hey everyone, Mike Vogel here with another episode of Break the Ice, joined this time by Caps legend, DC sports legend, and my good friend
Yes.
Craig Laughlin right here, and as always by producer extraordinaire Zach Garrett. Locker, thanks for joining us.
You finally had me on here.
Right?
I've heard about this. I've been sort of the last on the list, huh?
Yeah, well, you know, we had boxes to check before we got to you. But first off, I want you to tell people how you're feeling, because I know that the end of last season, the last couple of months of last season, it just felt weird not having you around. And everywhere we went, the first thing people asked about was you and your health, and I'm just glad to have you back full time.
Thank you.
And around you, and you look great, and it seems like everything's going great. But tell the people.
Well, I feel fantastic. The only thing that's still sort of lingering, it's been about 8 months now, and they said it would take a year just to feel comfortable again and not fatigued sometimes. I still get fatigued a little bit, maybe after a game, maybe being out too long on the road with you, things like that. But other than that, I feel good. I've been able to ride the bike, play tennis. So there are some things that I'm just, battling through, but it's great to be back around all my friends like yourself and being part of this team, and I'm excited about the season, but definitely a lot better. I think the biggest hurdle, though, was just getting over that surgery that took a long time, and then being able to come back and seeing Ovi score that big goal, and that was sort of on my calendar all along. And so it's exciting now to feel a lot better, to feel refreshed, to get back into the game, and I can't wait for the whole season.
I guess it's only been about 11 months since the whole process started.
Yes.
So you got to be patient with your body.
The doctor did tell me, he said, your heart is ironclad, but I can't guarantee the rest of your body. So I'm still working through that.
That's kind of the way the rest of us are operating too, day-to-day basis.
Yes.
But we want to. You're such a part of the furniture. I think you and Joe B and Al Koken, all three of you guys have been around here for decades, and you're an alumni, and I feel like sometimes that line gets blurred a little bit, and people forget that you had a pretty incredible playing career from the way I see it. So let's talk about that first. I'd love to know why you chose to go to Clarkson instead of playing in the OHA, OHL, whatever it was called during those days. What went into that decision? Because it seems pretty fateful. You had an amazing career at Clarkson. They retired your number.
Yep.
And it was a nice launching pad to a pretty strong career.
That's a pretty good story when I think back on that. At the time, I actually was cut from my midget team, which I thought I was going to make. So I took a step back and said, let me play football for the year at my high school, and I was going to play in a league called the Juvenile League, which was below Junior A, and it was sort of a spot where if you weren't any good after midget and weren't good enough to play junior, you would play juvenile. So I actually played juvenile, had a fantastic play. The fun was back because I didn't think I was going to get cut because I'd been with this team a long time, but they cut me right away. And I just said, I still want to play, so let me play in this juvenile league. I played in the juvenile league, and a junior coach saw me, and I ended up being and playing for the Wexford Raiders Junior A, Tier 2. And I thought nothing of it. I didn't think it was a highly scouted. I didn't really know much about the college ranks. And one day, a scout comes along and says, hey, we're interested in you. We're from Lake State. And I was like, where's Lake Superior State? Like university. Yeah. And you've got to understand that was me and my brother are the only ones in our family that actually finished their 4-year degree in college too. So my mom and dad were both farmers. My dad worked for the CPR Railway. My mom left home as a 12-year-old to make money for her family and was sent to Toronto to make money to send back to Killaloe, where she was born, which is northeast of Toronto. So we were sort of in a family that the reason I chose Clarkson is I had a chance to meet with Billy O'Flaherty. Jerry O'Flaherty had played in the NHL a long time, right? Yeah. So I met Billy, and I met Jerry York. Billy actually came to our house in Toronto and sat down with me in the living room and said, we would love you to come to Clarkson. We're not very far away. the biggest choice I made between that and Lake State, and there was other teams calling. Lake State was way too far for my parents to ever come. And the fact that my parents had never been in the United States by then.
Wow.
Yeah, okay, so it was like, you're going to the States? What school? I thought you would be going to University of Toronto or something like that. And I said, well, they're offering me this full ride, and they have a belief in me. And I was like, okay. The reason I made the choice was I said to my mom and dad, I said, could you drive to Potsdam, New York, upstate New York, 4.5 hours to come see me play? And they said, yes, we've never been in the States, but we'd love to do that. And so that was the main reason that I signed on with Clarkson, and I never looked back. It was fantastic.
And you had an amazing rookie season there, freshman season there, and get drafted by the NHL, by the Montreal Canadiens. And so that's the 1977 NHL entry draft, 10th round. And in those days, they let you draft as long as you wanted to, right?
Exactly.
So, we're done. We don't want, so you'd have some teams that would pick through the 8th round and say, we're good. And then other teams that were like, no, we want to keep grabbing players here. And so, I don't know, there were 6, 7, 8 guys taken in your 10th round, and there were a couple more rounds, but there were only 17 guys that got drafted after you.
Yes.
And out of those 17 guys, only 2 of them made it to the NHL for a combined total of like 45 games. Yep. But Archie Henderson got taken ahead of you by the Caps.
Unbelievable.
So, they could have just cut to the chase, right? If they had just taken you then.
And let me tell you a story about that. And I had never been, there's 2 stories about me getting drafted. It was number one, that it was my freshman year. We were number 1 in the country. Jerry York was a fabulous coach. I mean,
and he was just in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and he was just in the beginning. Yeah. So it was a fantastic situation for me. The fact that I had Jerry York, I had Billy O'Flaherty. We played in a small rink, which helped me out because I wasn't the best skater. So now we're playing in this small Walker Arena. They got a lot of bigger guys, so we were a big physical team, and it worked out perfectly for me and my style. So I want to go back to 77 and around then when I started there. A guy comes in with a fedora. My wife, who I've been married to now for over 45 years, and we've been dating since freshman year in college, Linda, is an usher to make extra money. And she says, yeah, I'll be an usher at Walker Arena. I'll help her. And she was in charge of the press box, which was, 5 seats at old Walker Arena. And this guy with the fedora walks in, and she says, hello, sir. Where are you sitting? He says, I'm sitting in the press box. And hi, my name's Ron Caron of the Montreal Canadiens, with his fedora, with his overcoat. And she said the following. She said, well, what are you here for? And, well, I'm here to watch that number 22, Laughlin. And my wife, that's who I'm dating. And they had the quick relationship there that when he kept coming to games, she was like, Craig, they're watching you. And I had a great freshman year. I actually learned how to train and to play at that level, because back then you played sports all summer long. You didn't have time to really train for the game of hockey. So I really trained hard that summer, and lo and behold, I got drafted. And the draft day was funny too, because at the back of the Toronto Star, folks, they had a box 4x4 of the NHL draft back then. It wasn't even front page of the sports. And my dad's sitting at the kitchen table having a cigarette, and he says, hey, you've been drafted. And I'm like, to who, how, when? There was no social media. And he said, you were drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, and you're a Toronto Maple Leaf guy. And we had to talk about it, and I said, okay, I've been drafted. About a week later, I get a letter saying, hey, Craig, we're so happy to have you as part of our organization, but we really want you to stay in school for the full 4 years. Don't bother thinking about coming to camp. Don't do anything. Just stay in school for 4 years, and we'll talk to you down the road. And that was my letter, my first, and it had the nice CH crest on top of it, and it was a registered letter, and back then you only get registered letters from the IRS, I think, in Canada. But other than that, I was like, okay, I got an IRS letter. But no, it was the Montreal Canadiens, and that was the start of my career thinking about playing pro hockey.
And so you're going through those last 3 years and you were so consistent those last 3 years of college too. Your numbers were almost identical.
Yes.
A nice leap up from the freshman year, but you established a level there. And then when you did graduate from Clarkson, you got a couple games there with Nova Scotia in their system.
At the end of my senior year.
And then you played a season and a half, and again, you knocked them out there. I think 32 goals in 40-some games.
Yeah, it was, and
year.
that was sort of the start of me thinking that I could play at the NHL level. And at the end of my senior year, another good story was I think it gave me some confidence heading into that final year of college and a chance to play in Nova Scotia was the fact that back then they had a senior game out in Minnesota at the rink with the glass boards, the old Minnesota rink, and I got invited to that. And it was Mr. Lou Lamoriello invited me, and I think it's only happened once, and said, we want the best from the East versus the best from the West, and you've got to be a senior. It doesn't matter if you're drafted or not. And we had such a blast. We went to Providence, where he was the coach at the time, spent a week there, and then we played the best against the West, and Lou was fantastic as a coach, and I was in Providence for a week. He said, we got to get ready for this game. And he actually called me, and I was in Nova Scotia, and he said, do you want to play in the senior game? I said, absolutely. I would never miss it. And I played 2 in Nova Scotia. I played at Glens Falls and I think at Springfield. And then I came right back to Clarkson to get ready for the senior game. And that sort of helped me out to establish that I had a chance, maybe, to play in the American League. And maybe if I do well there, I can play in the NHL.
And you had Jerry York in college. Then you turn pro. You get Bert Templeton, who was he didn't coach in the pros for very long, but a legendary OHA and OHL coach who won a couple of championships there. And then he coached Joe Ricci in juniors too, in North Bay, right?
And then I had John Brophy,
right? And then John Brophy,
it was amazing.
And you had Brophy later with the Leafs, but we'll get to that. But that second full season there, you get called up in the middle.
Yep.
And you never went back. So I forget where your first game was, but I know that second game, I think you were on the road your first NHL game.
In Detroit on a Thursday night.
And then home for Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday.
Yes.
And first NHL goal that night. Couple Hall of Famers helping you out with that one.
Yeah, they didn't really help me out that much. I mostly did it myself. No, it was great because I went to Detroit, and at that camp, folks, the team said, Craig, you should have made the team. We're going to call you up by December. Just go back to Nova Scotia. And I was like, well, if I think you made the team, and I had a great camp. I was really good in camp. I felt great. And that's when I put up those huge numbers down in the American League. I was playing with Davey Gorman and I think Metivier or Danny Daou at center, and we just had a great line. I had a lot of fun there, and Bert Templeton showed you how to be a pro. I mean, talk about a tough, no-nonsense coach that I had that helped make me a pro. It would be Bert Templeton and John Brophy starting in the American League. And at the time when I got called up, it was a Thursday. I went to Detroit at the Joe, and the coach said to me, he says, you're going to play left wing tonight. And remember, back in the day, folks, you never flipped wings. It was, if you're a right wing, you go up and down the right wing. If you're a right shot, hockey. Yes. So I ended up playing left wing. I remember Reed Larson, and I'd never seen a guy shoot the puck that hard. I think he scored 2. I was not very good that game. I struggled on the off wing, so I said, well, Reggie Ewell's going to come back, I'm sure, on Saturday, so I probably will be sent down. They tell me on Friday morning at practice, they said, hey, Craig, Reggie Ewell's not playing. You will be playing. And I was like, oh, my God, Hockey Night in Canada, 8 o'clock a game against the Calgary Flames. And the story about that and the goal was the fact that Bob Berry was our head coach. and he would always whistle for you to change. You could hear it everywhere. So I was playing the left side, and we were on a quick, they were changing, and Big Larry Robinson, Big Bird, comes around the net, full speed at our end, and I'm on the far side away from the benches. I hear a whistle, but I'm thinking, we're going up the ice. And sure enough, Big Bird steps out from behind the net, snaps it to Lafleur. And at the time when Lafleur got the puck, it was like the whole arena, the forum, stood up on their feet. And I see the hair flowing, and I'm saying everything. And I come down the left side, and I yell Flowers as loud as I could. And he just throws the pass across, and I think I'm getting cracked. I think I got a picture at home. Like someone's tomahawking me from behind. I think it was Willie Platt, one of those guys tomahawking me. And I just one-time it into the top corner against my next goalie. I think it was Pat Riggin in net, and went under the bar down, and that was the start. That gained tremendous confidence for me. It allowed me now to play my game. We ended up losing that game, I think 7-4 or whatever it was. And back then, you got to remember, Vogues, when I broke into the NHL that year, you played with 11 forwards, 60, and 2 goalies, right? So now you're rotating through guys, and you're getting more ice time as a forward. And if you're playing well, he cuts down to 3 lines. So I was playing a lot, and I ended up playing with Mondeau and Tremblay. That was my line. And I played so well, the next game he says, look, Locker, we're moving you up, and we're going to put you with Lafleur. And I was like, left side with Guy Lafleur. And that was the start. And I had a great run. I think I had scored, I'm not sure if I scored 6 or 7 games in a row.
Wow.
It was something crazy like that. I'm still like on the on the list of most goals to start a career with the Montreal Canadiens. I think I'm one of 3 that went 6 or 7 games. So I didn't want to go back.
Well, you scored like a dozen goals in half a season.
Yeah, exactly.
There. You were definitely on the uprise.
Yeah.
I got to ask you, though, about the last regular season game that year. That was the first game you ever played in Washington.
Yes.
As a visit, the only game you played as a visitor before the trade. What was your impression? Do you even remember anything about that game?
Oh, I remember like it was yesterday. And the reason
obviously you're still 6 months away from being traded.
Right.
But what was your impression of the arena, the whole situation here?
I think we probably lost that game because we were already best in the NHL. We hadn't lost hardly any games that year. So I think a lot of the guys were on cruise control. But what I remember most about Cap Center, number one, how dark it was.
Yeah.
The tell screen, which I had never seen in an arena, the horseshoe-shaped top, the walking down the long ramp to get to our locker room, and we were like, oh, my God. And then the thing I remember most is we talked about it at the end of the game, and the fact that we saw fans going onto the ice at the end of the game. And I think there was only like 10,000, but they were going on the ice for signing autographs and everything in the last game. That never happened in Montreal.
Yeah,
Forum, it was like, it was locked down. You couldn't get in as a fan or a friends or anything. It was hard getting family just to be there for the skate. But now they've got all these fans on the ice, the shirts off their back. They're signing autographs. They have red carpets on the ice. And we're looking back from our locker room on the far side, walking up the ramp, and there's all these fans on the ice. And that's my last memory of Capitol Center. Never thought I'd ever see it again other than the following season if I had stayed in Montreal. And sure enough, I got traded here.
Yeah, and what was your reaction when that went down? Because that whole summer was the Save the Caps thing, and it looked like if Abe Poland didn't have his trio of demands met, that the team would be somewhere else maybe the next season. And I mean, that's when you came. Yeah. That's when Dick Patrick came. Yeah. Strudler. I mean, all these people who are still here and had a significant hand in this team still being here and us even having this conversation.
Well, we were surprised, actually, because I wasn't surprised because there was a lot of heat on our team. And the big reason why the trade happened, to be honest with you, is we lost Game 5 to the Quebec Nordiques, and Bergeron was their coach, the Petite Tiger, against our team. We were supposed to win that series easily. It was like 1-8 or whatever it was. We ended up losing it, and it was a former cap that did us in was Dale Hunter on a wraparound at the Forum in Game 5. And it was either in overtime or late third period, and the wraparound on Rick Walmsley, and the place went silent. The Forum went silent. How could this happen? You guys were the best team in the league. You'd only lost 12 games or 13 games outright. You should be winning this and going to the Stanley Cup. So I was waiting all summer to get a call, and I didn't really think I was going to be traded because I was sort of young, and I thought, maybe there's a chance they're going to keep me. And then first day of training camp, I got called up to the office. Hey, I see Rod coming out. He says, hey, they want you up in the office with Mr. Grunman, and he wants to tell you something. And I was like, what? And so I went up, saw the group up there, and they said, sorry, we had to trade you. We've traded you to the Washington Capitals. Good luck the rest of your career. We're happy to have you this past year, yada, yada, yada. So I see Rod the next day, and I said, we're on a plane coming here. And he looks in the paper, and it says they're trying to save the Caps. And we're like, where are we going? We had never been in Washington other than that quick game. And we're like, save the Caps. Is this team going to be staying? And Rod's just like, I'm not sure. And then we landed, and the four of us, it was nice to come with those three guys. Jarvy's a dear friend, Brian Engblom, Rod, who's still one of my closest friends to this day. And had I come alone, it probably would have been different. But had I come with those four guys, it was a massive trade. And the day we came, we were confident when we went to training camp in Hershey with Brian Murray that we were going to make the playoffs. We had that much confidence in our team.
What do you think that stemmed from?
I think it stemmed from, number one, Brian Murray, from the fact that they overhauled the team, the fact that we had a lot of new players coming in, not only us, but Kenny Houston's, all these guys around the league that were moved, and that Brian wanted to bring them in, and that Brian and then, of course, you can't forget, we're in the lobby of the hotel in Hershey, or just outside as a car pulls up, and there's this young kid that steps out of the car, and obviously back in the day we would get in shape during the season, not in the off season. And this young kid comes out, no shirt on. He steps out of the car, and we both look at him, and we're just like shaking our head. Oh my God! And it's Scotty Stevens, and he is Jack Vogue. I'm telling you, he came right from the gym. And he says, hi, I'm Scott Stevens. I'm 18 years old, whatever he was. I think he was 18.
Yeah.
And he comes on the ice, and we watch him in the preseason games up in Hershey, and he's challenging everybody. I said, we're going to have a good team. And our D were excellent. That was a big part of it. Brian wanted to build a defense-first team, and that's how we made the playoffs for the first time.
That's always been a signature of David Poile teams, too.
Yes.
Even going to Nashville, he always had the D. Lined up and everything. So when you look back on your entire career, playing career, who were the coaches that meant the most to you, or that you were most in sync with, helped you out the most, just with the benefit of hindsight?
I would think that, I think Bert Templeton, he was a hard-ass son of a gun, man. He made me like, you have to work to be a pro. You've got to do this to be a pro. John Brophy, one of the toughest coaches in the NHL and in the American League and in the Eastern Coast League, where he coached a lot of his career. So those two guys, and then I think Brian Murray and Terry Murray. Brian Murray in particular, he gave me the chance here in Washington. He put me on a good line with Haworth and Adams. He said that was good chemistry, and we created great chemistry, and we had a good run here in Washington. So I think it would be Brian Murray at the top. I've always thought he was a coach that, back in the day, there wasn't a lot of great communicators. Like, you never knew, folks, if you were playing or not. Your jersey's up or it isn't. And if it isn't, you go up in the stands. Like, there was no saying, Craig, we're not playing you because of this, and this. Watch the tape. There was none of that. And to me, Brian Murray was the best communicator, along with David Poile. Both those guys are great human beings. They invited us over in the summer to barbecues. We became friends. We became not only friends, I just rave about Brian Murray and David Poile and what they mean to this franchise, but also what they meant to me.
Well, when you came in, and you alluded to it in the last answer, that so many new players being on that team. So last season, when Dubois, Chikrin, Logan Thompson, etc., those 7 new guys came in, that was only the 4th time out of almost 4,000 regular season games that the Caps had as many as 6 new players. Obviously, opening night 1974 was the first time.
Yep.
Second time was the game you're talking about, opening night 82-83.
Absolutely.
Third time was Ovi's NHL debut, which came after the lockout, right? So everybody had a slew of new players. And then the 4th time was opening night last year. And if you look back on all of those, I mean, except for the first one, because that took 8 years to. But, the other ones, good things happened pretty quickly after. Like that team, David Poyle put together in 82-83.
Yeah.
So it was the first of, I think, 14, 16 straight playoff appearances. Pretty good. I mean, 16 out of 21 made it then, but still, you guys had really strong regular seasons. You guys weren't just sneaking in as the last team. Obviously, there were some other good teams in that Division II, and the playoffs were another story.
Sure.
But what was it that made that Plumbers line so successful that you alluded to with Haworth and Adams?
Well, folks, it's like we talk about, and we see it all the time. Number one, you have certain elements that you need to put on each line, right? And we knew, I knew as a right winger, I was going to play behind definitely Mike Gartner or somebody else. I was going to be down the list. So number one, you get better matchups, but also the way Brian Murray put us together. Alan Haworth was as fast as anybody in the day. Okay, he could absolutely fly. You had Greg Adams, who was big and tough. And I call myself the hands guy, folks. I always told those 3, just get me the puck. You're probably not going to get it back. I'm going to shoot, and we're going to score. So to me, we had 3 worker bees, but all brought different elements. And to this day, it was the best line I ever played on, bar none, because we played a lot of time together. Time on ice was a lot, and we spent time together. But I think it was the fact that back in the day, what made it easier for our teams compared to maybe the ones Ovi's first year and the next year, last season, is the fact that we got to spend time on the road together. Like, it's not like it is now. Like, when we went to St. Louis, we'd stay overnight, and we'd fly home in the morning, and we'd practice at Mount Vernon. Then you'd drive over the bridge, but because there was too much traffic, we'd call a meeting at the ground round, and I wouldn't get home till 7 or 8 o'clock at night. That's the way it was, because we'd fly in, and they'd say 12 noon practice, 1 o'clock practice, so you'd fly into National, we'd drive over to Mount Vernon, we'd practice, and then you don't want to go in traffic across the bridge. So to me, that year, more than any years, it made it easier to have the camaraderie. And we had tremendous chemistry. But that line in particular, how he could wire the puck with a slapper, we'd always tell him, if you watch his videos, he'd always screw himself just about into the ice because he'd spin so hard when he shot the puck. Greg Adams was a grinder. We got monikered the Plumbers, and we brought our hard hats, we brought our toolkit, and we went to work every night, and Brian loved that, and he played us a lot because of it.
And that was the era when those lines that did stick together, they always had a name.
Yes.
Right? So that when you were traded to LA, what was that like?
That was, I was very surprised. I was a healthy scratch, and Brian said, "Hey, can you play center tonight?" I think Gussie went down. He was hurt. So I came up and played center, and after that game, he didn't say anything. And then the biggest issue with that was, I think it was early February I was traded. Courtney was born February 2nd, so I was traded like 2 days after, or a week after her being born. That was a difficult time because I had to fly to L.A. And when I got to L.A., Vogues, I had another surprise because I'm sitting in the stands the first night. They said, "Hey, fly in. We're playing here at the Fabulous Forum. It's a Saturday night. You'll play the next game and get you into the lineup." Number one, we had the sweater coach, Robbie Fatorik. Okay. Number two, Rogie Vachon was the GM. So when he dealt me, he was looking for a forward. Caps were looking for a D in Grant Ledgerd. Yeah. So it was 1-for-1 back in the day. But as soon as I walked in, I figured I might be in trouble because Rogie Vachon in his broken French said, Craig, we've been looking for a fast winger our whole season, and we're so happy to have you on board. I was like, did he even watch me play?
I was going to say, how is this?
I was like, okay, I got hands. I'm not fleet-footed, and I don't have speed. And that was my start of my tenure there in L.A., and it was hard with Linda and the kids being home, me living on Manhattan Beach. You know how hard that's is. Well, that's tough, right, by myself. So it was quite a short tenure, and I didn't feel comfortable playing in L.A. because of my time in Washington.
And then the one thing I want to ask you about your time in Toronto is I know that the coaching was split that year. George Armstrong, who's always been a fascinating character to me, was the interim head coach part of that season. And George was obviously the captain of the last Leafs team to win the Stanley Cup and a Hall of Fame player. And what was he like? And what was he didn't coach for very long, but
no.
And you as a Leafs fan growing up, and what was it like to play for him? And now, again, with the benefit of hindsight, you obviously had no idea then that this cup drought would still be going on, 40 years down the road.
I knew because I watched it. Saturday night hockey in Toronto was fantastic. Our family lived in downtown Toronto, so every Saturday night, folks, we'd get around our TV, but before that, because it was wintertime, my dad had built a small rink, 20 by 40, 20 by 30 in the backyard. So we'd play hockey during the intermissions and then come in and have hot chocolate with our skates on the linoleum floors. And the family room, we'd watch the game. We'd go right back out to the ice. And then, so that was our sort of thing on a Saturday night. But I loved George Armstrong. I loved Dave Keon. I loved Bobby Bond was one of my favorites. Tim Horton was one of my favorites. So I grew up a Leafs fan. So when I saw the Chief come in and wanting to coach, he walked in the locker room. He said, well, Harold Ballard's hired me. I don't really want to coach you guys. And I was like, what? And so he was sort of thrown into the And Brophy had told me in the morning, he said, I think I'm done today. We were skating around in warm-ups, and he just skated our butts off for a pregame skate, and I knew he was probably on his way out that afternoon, which he was. Right. And George came in, and the thing I remember about George, so the memory that I have most of all is that the next day at practice, George Armstrong came in, and I think we lost his first night in his debut at Maple Leaf Gardens. Wendell Clark said, okay, we got to welcome George, and George comes out with his old Tackleberry skates, his same gloves that he wore playing, and I was like, oh, my God. And Wendell Clark, I think, he was the guy that did it. He piled some sticks at center, and we threw them out, and we just played shinny hockey for 45 minutes, and that was our practice. So, and that's sort of, I'm not sure George wanted to coach that much, but Harold Ballard said, you're my guy. Yeah. And that's what happened. And then we had an awful season. We had a lot of problems. We had a good team, but we just didn't gel. We had too many fractions and too many different groups that were there, veterans and then young guys and all this type of stuff. So that's what happened in Toronto.
That was kind of the end of a dark time for the Leafs there.
Yes, it was very
just on the cusp of getting better with Wendell.
It was.
Got better a few years later.
Yes.
What led to the shift into broadcasting? Was that something that you thought about at all when you were playing in Washington or
okay, I'll
any
tell
of the
you
other
when it
stops
happened.
in Germany too?
I'll tell you the start of that. It started in Game 7 against the Islanders in the playoffs. That triple, 4 overtimes in April?
Yeah, Easter Eve, Pat LaFontaine.
Yes,
the
Easter Classic, okay? So the players were so tired they couldn't get them out to do interviews. So I had to do interviews with all the major networks that whole time because they'd say, hey, we need somebody in the intermission. We need somebody. So it was me. Mike Bossy would do it for the Islanders. He was injured too. I was injured game 1, hit by Dwayne Sutter behind the net and hurt my knee badly. And so I was just like, sure, I'll do it. So at the end of that, I actually came to a playoff game with the Caps. I was out of it, but we were still living in Washington, so I came to a playoff game. I wasn't playing for the Caps at the time. I think it was in L.A. And Bill Brown at the time said, have you ever thought about getting into broadcasting? I thought you did a great job, Dad. And I said, yeah, probably. He said, well, we're thinking about it. And I said, okay, I'm going to Germany. I went to Germany and had a great year, and I was supposed to come back to play for the St. Louis Blues. The International Ice Hockey Federation said, no, you've got to play in the playoffs. And I said, okay, Max Fiedra, the GM at the time, as he's sitting in his desk in a chair like this, smoking a cigarette, I said, Max, I've been asked to go back to the St. Louis Blues. Who do you think the GM was?
Ron Caron.
Thank you. So he comes in, and they say, we want to sign you. And I said, well, we'll be done from the playoffs. It's probably 2 out of 3, and I'll be done. It ends up, Max Fiedra said, no. Our playoffs are 20 games. I'm like, 20 games? I can't go back then because we're going for another month and a half. Dave Donnelly, who played in the NHL, played for the Bruins a little bit, he said, I'm going home. I'm not playing in the playoffs. And I'm like, what do you mean you're going home? And he took off the next flight out of Munich and went home to Boston. Wow. So I'm stuck as the only import to play in the relegation round, folks. The relegation round, we're playing Division II teams. So if you look up my numbers, I don't even know if they have my numbers. We went 19-1. I had like 40 points, wow. 2 points or 3 points a game, whatever it was. And at the end of the season, he said, we're in the first division again. We've got all our sponsors back. We're making more money. He says, what do you want? And I said, I want a 3-year deal. I want 2 Mercedes. I want a tutor for my kids. I want a nice house on the farm. Yada, yada, yada. I said all this. And I said, there's no way he's going to agree to this. So next couple of days, he calls me, says, Craig, you're all good on all the things you asked for. We're going to sign you. Okay. The same time, Bill Brown calls me and said, Craig, we're making a change. We want a player in there instead of Al Koken. Al Koken's wore so many hats, right?
Yeah.
But he had never played. We want you to come in. You're going to come in and do some demos in the studio. I did the demos in the studio. They said, we want to hire you. I said, well, I'm living in Toronto. Can I fly in and do games number 1? And I'm taking a big hit in the amount of money that I was making in Germany compared to what because it was only, remember, it was home team sports and over the air, right? So DC 20. So I was only doing like 25 games. So my wife and I looked at each other, and we were at Canada's Wonderland in mid-August. I was supposed to fly to Frankfurt to start that 3-year deal, and I was playing the best I ever was. I was 32. I was playing unbelievable because over there at Olympic Sheet, we only practiced 3 times a week. We played every Friday, every Sunday.
Season was shorter too. Yeah.
Okay, so I was playing great. So I called Max Fiedra on one of those huge phones, the size of size of this, and I called him. And he called me. He says, hey, when are you flying into Munich? We're going to pick you up, get to Frankfurt. We got training camp. Don't worry about training camp, Craig. You just do whatever you want. Just be ready for the season. I said, perfect, Max. I'll give you a call back. We're at Canada's Wonderland. My kids are starting to be on the roller coaster. I'm on the roller coaster. I get off. I said, I got to make this call. Like Linda and I had talked about it a lot. And we weren't sure that we wanted to stay there, and we wanted to come back to North America. It was just something we wanted. And so I called Max Fiedra. And I called Max, and I said, Max, I've got to tell you, I can't be in Frankfurt, and I can't come to Munich. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to play this year. And he's on the other end of the phone. What do you mean? It's so late. I can't get another import, yada, yada, yada. And I said, well, my back's so goddamn sore carrying your team last year that I'm going to retire. Next day in the Sport Bilt, the big sports magazine over there, Laughlin retires due to back injury. Tough luck for Landshut. And so that's how I started into the TV. And I've been doing it ever since and loving every minute of it.
Yeah, and I guess it was Jeff Rimmer and then Kenny Albert. Couple other guys before Joe.
It was Al Koken.
Yeah.
To start.
Yeah.
Kenny Albert, Jeff Rimmer, and Joe B. It's like I tell Joe B all along. Those are my 3 favorites. He's number 4.
Well, the 2 of you guys are amazing together. I think and that's one of the. There's a lot of perks to what I do, but one of the bad things is I don't get to listen to you guys because I'm watching what you're watching. But there was a time when I didn't travel all the time, and I did listen to you guys. And I think you guys are the best at what you do, and I know our fans think that too.
Well, thank you.
It's amazing the chemistry that goes on between not just you and Joe, but you, Joe, and Al, and you see it just in the day-to-day interactions with you guys. It's been a lot of fun to see the three of you guys do what you do. I'm really privileged to sit next to you guys.
No,
on the
they're my
plane,
team.
too.
They're my team. Like, it was so easy. The transition was hard at the start when fans saying, "Oh, Locker, you stink. Locker, we hate your voice. Locker, we do this." I had to go to speech class, and people didn't understand this. Like, I used to go to a speech class in Maryland, and they wanted to take my Canadian slang and accent out of my telecast. So I went in the summer, and I had to go to a guy who was a speech guy. And the biggest thing I remember from that, Vogues, is COT. How do you say that?
Caught.
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 Okay. And he was trying to say caught and caught. Caught and caught. You've got to learn the different things. And I spent a whole summer doing that because I wanted to get better, because I was getting nailed by people in the stands walking up the stairs at Old Cap Center, right? You're right in the stands.
Right,
Laughlin, you suck.
Nowhere to hide.
I know. And it was like, okay, well, I'm going to get better. Give me a break. It's my first couple of years here. Yeah. Give me a break and I'll be better. And so the group now is Joe is the best I've ever worked with, even though I tell him it's Kenny and Al and everybody else. But he is, because he sets me up. He doesn't overstep his boundaries. I'm on the show to answer the why and how. He answers all the other questions, and he sets up the why and hows for me to answer. And then Al Koken has been with the team since '74 when he was doing newspaper writing and all that stuff with the first team ever. So to me, it's just a great team that we have, and we know where we sit on the bus. They know I sit at the front of the bus in the first row, and they know they're behind me, and it works out perfectly, folks.
Yeah, it does. I got to say, you're exactly correct. And hopefully it goes on and on and on.
I hope so. I want this. Why would I leave something like this? It's the greatest thing in the world. We get to watch the Caps. We get to watch NHL hockey. We've had the lucky opportunity to watch the greatest goal scorer in history, Alex. So to me, it's just been a fantastic run, and I don't want it to end anytime soon.
Yeah, 2018 was pretty fun too.
Yeah,
right?
It was. 2018 was fantastic.
Well, I appreciate you taking some time here. I know you got other things to do, so we could do this all day.
Absolutely,
and we could do it with Joe all day too.
Absolutely.
And so we will at some point. But thanks to Craig Laughlin, the legend of DC Sports, for spending some time with us here on Break the Ice.